My husband installed cameras and trackers on everything I use, controlling even the minutes I spent in the bathroom, monitoring every message, every call, every step I took inside and outside the house. But what he didn't know was that while he obsessively watched me, I uncovered all his sordid secrets and used his own surveillance system to prove in court who the real monster was in that marriage. And when he realized he had lost everything, it was too late. I was locked in the bathroom, sitting on the cold, tiled floor of the shower, my hands trembling as I clutched my phone, hidden inside an empty makeup bag, and I could hear his footsteps on the other side of the door, pacing back and forth in the living room, waiting, counting the minutes, because he always counted, always timed everything. And I knew that when I came out, he'd ask why I took 8 minutes instead of the usual 5. He'd want to know what I was doing, if I was talking to someone, if I was plotting something against him. My heart hammered so loudly, I was sure he could hear it through the door, through the walls, through the 3 cameras he'd installed in the hallway, pointed directly at the bathroom door. The only room in the house that still didn't have a camera inside. But he compensated with the timer, with the questions, with that suspicious and accusing gaze that made me feel guilty, even when I'd done absolutely nothing wrong. In that moment, inside that makeup bag, I held all the evidence I'd been collecting for months. Screenshots, recordings, documents that showed everything, absolutely everything he did, all the places he went while he thought I was trapped at home under constant surveillance, all the lies, all the betrayals, all the money he embezzled, and there I was, the woman he swore to completely control, holding in my hands the key to my freedom and his destruction. But first, I needed to get out of that bathroom, put a smile on my face, pretend once again that I was the obedient and controlled wife. Because if he suspected something now, if he realized I had woken up, that I had discovered everything, he could destroy the evidence, he could hurt me, he could do something worse. So I took a deep breath, wiped away the silent tears falling down my face, hid the phone in the safest place I had, stood up from the floor, flushed the toilet to justify the extra time, washed my hands, looked in the mirror at the broken woman I had become, and opened the door. Before we continue with this story that completely changed my life, I need to pause for a moment to speak with you who are listening now, because sharing these experiences isn't easy for me, but I do it because I know many people are going through similar situations, feeling trapped, watched, with no way out, and if my story can help even one person realize there is hope, that there is a path to freedom, then it's worth all the vulnerability of exposing my life this way. If you're enjoying this content, if you're relating to this story, or if you know someone who needs to hear this, please subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any stories, and leave a like because it helps more people find this content and realize they're not alone. I read all the comments, and I'm deeply moved by every message of support, by every story you share. So stay until the end, because what happened after that moment in the bathroom was a turning point I never even imagined possible. Now, let's go back to that day that changed everything. But to understand how I got there, I need to tell you from the beginning, from the day I met the man I thought would be the love of my life. I met Richard at a mutual friend's wedding party 7 years ago. And he seemed to be exactly the kind of man every woman dreams of finding. Attentive, polite, successful, always with the right words at the right time. He called me every day, sent flowers to my work, remembered every detail of our conversations. And at the time, I thought this was love, that it was dedication, that it was proof of how much he cared about me. In the first 6 months of dating, he was perfect. He treated me like a princess. He introduced me to his family, who seemed lovely. His mother, Helen, welcomed me with warm hugs and said her son had finally found a woman of worth. And his sister, Patricia, pretended to be my friend, always inviting me to lunches and conversations I thought were genuine. We got married on a beautiful spring Saturday with all our family present. My parents were so happy to see me fulfilled, and I was radiant, dressed as a bride, truly believing that I was beginning the best phase of my life alongside a man who loved me. The changes started subtly, so subtly that I didn't even notice at first. He started asking more about my day, about who I talked to at work, about why I took so long to reply to his messages. And I thought it was sweet. I thought he was interested in my life. But then came the requests, always disguised as concern. He said the neighborhood was dangerous, and it would be better if I shared my real-time location with him, just for his peace of mind, just so he knew I was okay. And I activated it, because, after all, what harm was there if I had nothing to hide? Then came the suggestion to install cameras at home, for security, he said, because there had been robberies in the area. And it made sense, so I agreed. But what started with one camera at the front door turned into cameras in the living room, the kitchen, the hallway, the garage, in every room of the house except the bathroom. And I started to feel uncomfortable. But when I complained, he accused me of hiding something, of not trusting him, of being ungrateful because he was trying to protect me. By the second year of marriage, I had no privacy left. He checked my phone every night, read every message, every email, every social media comment, and if I deleted anything, he'd snap, yell, accuse me of having affairs, of planning to leave him, and I'd spend hours explaining, crying, proving I hadn't done anything wrong, until eventually I stopped deleting anything, stopped talking to friends, stopped going out, because it was easier to avoid the fights than to deal with the hell he created afterward. My parents started to notice something was wrong. My mother called me worried, saying I had changed, that I didn't smile anymore. But what could I say? How could I admit that the perfect marriage everyone envied was actually a prison? I was ashamed. I was afraid of judgment. I was afraid to confirm that I had made the wrong choice. So I lied, said everything was fine, that it was just work fatigue, and isolated myself more and more, exactly as he wanted. His mother-in-law and sister-in-law, who initially seemed so welcoming, showed their true colors when they realized I was vulnerable. Helen started openly criticizing me, saying I didn't know how to take care of the house properly, that I didn't cook as well as she did, that her son deserved better. And Patricia gossiped about me to the entire family, inventing stories, distorting conversations, creating intrigues. And Richard always sided with them, never defending me. In fact, he often used their criticisms as a justification to humiliate me even more. I tried to save the marriage in every possible way, suggested couples therapy, but he refused, saying the problem was just me. I tried to talk calmly, explaining how I felt, but he twisted everything, accused me of playing the victim, said I was crazy, that I was making things up, that he was a perfect husband and I was too ungrateful to recognize it. And I started to believe it, started to think that I really was the problem, that I was too difficult, too sensitive, too problematic. That's when I discovered, by chance, through a notification that popped up on his tablet sitting on the table that he had a secret email account. And when I opened that email, when I saw all those messages, all those conversations with other women, all those photos, all those scheduled meetings, all that money being spent on gifts and hotels, while he accused me of being unfaithful, it was as if something inside me finally broke for good. But this time, it didn't break to destroy me. It broke to free me. Because it was in that moment that I realized I wasn't the problem, that I never was the problem, and that it was time to stop being the victim and start being the protagonist of my own story. That night, after discovering the secret email, I didn't sleep. I lay beside him, pretending everything was normal while my mind worked frantically, processing years of emotional abuse, years of gaslighting, years of feeling small and wrong. And I realized with absolute clarity that he had created this surveillance system not to protect me, but to control me while he did exactly everything he accused me of doing. He watched me to ensure I stayed trapped at home, isolated, friendless, with no life of my own, with no one to tell about the abuse, while he went out freely, met other women, spent our money, and returned home to accuse and humiliate me. It was as if a dense fog that had covered my mind for years finally dissipated, and I could see with absolute clarity that I didn't deserve that no woman deserves that I had worth, I had strength, I had intelligence, and that if he could use technology to imprison me, I could use the same technology to free myself. But I needed to be smart, I needed to be patient, I needed to plan every move carefully, because if he found out too soon, I didn't know what he would be capable of. In the following days, I started observing everything with completely new eyes. I paid attention to his every behavior pattern, the times he left, the excuses he gave, the inconsistencies in his stories, and mentally noted every detail, because I couldn't write anything down, couldn't leave traces he might find on the cameras or the monitored phone. I needed a phone he didn't know existed, so I used grocery money, saving a few dollars a week, hiding it in unlikely places, inside sanitary pad packages that I knew he'd never touch because he found them disgusting, inside empty facial cream jars at the back of the cabinet. And after 2 months, I had enough to buy a basic prepaid smartphone, which I hid inside that empty makeup bag he never paid attention to because he thought makeup was trivial. With that secret phone, I started documenting everything. I took photos of bank statements when he left papers scattered, photographed his tablet notifications whenever I had the opportunity. I took screenshots from the security cameras through the app, downloaded videos showing him coming home drunk in the middle of the night, or the arguments where he verbally abused me. Because everything he used to watch me was also recording his crimes. The evidence of the abuse, proof of everything. I needed help, but I obviously couldn't trust anyone in his family, and I was afraid to involve my parents because I didn't want to put them in danger or worry them before having a solid plan. So I started researching on the secret phone, always in the bathroom, always timing myself so as not to arouse suspicion. And I found organizations that support women experiencing domestic violence, found specialized attorneys, found online support groups where other women shared their stories and escape strategies. It was through these groups that I met Dr. Ann Peterson, an incredible attorney who worked pro bono for women without resources. And I scheduled an appointment, telling Richard it was for a gynecologist. And when I sat in her office and told her the whole story, showed her the photos, the videos, the documents, she looked at me with that mixture of compassion and determination and said I had an extremely strong case, that everything he did constituted psychological abuse, false imprisonment, coercive control, and that the very cameras and trackers he used were evidence against him. because excessive monitoring without consent is a crime, and I had evidence of years of documented abuse. Dr. Ann Peterson helped me put together a meticulous, step-by-step plan. She guided me on how to gather more specific evidence, how to document his every suspicious expense, every incriminating message, every abusive behavior, and explained that when the time came, I could request a protective order, file for a contested divorce, and sue for emotional distress, and that with all that evidence, I would not only get out of that situation, but would emerge with my dignity, my financial security, and my freedom, guaranteed by law. She made me promise not to confront him before everything was ready, because controlling men can become violent when they realize they're losing control. So I returned home that day with a mixture of fear and hope. Fear of being discovered, but hope that there was finally a way out, a light at the end of that dark tunnel where I had lived for so long. And then I began to execute the plan. Each day pretending to be the submissive wife he thought I was, each night collecting another piece of proof, another piece of evidence, another piece of the puzzle that would eventually destroy him completely. The execution of the plan took 4 full months of silent, meticulous, careful work, and the first step was to create a financial safety net he couldn't touch. So I started saving money even more strategically. I asked to pay for groceries with cash, saved the change, said I had spent more than I actually had, and I opened a secret bank account at a branch across town, at a different bank from ours, where I deposited every penny I could save. And within a few months, I had enough to survive for several months if I needed to leave home at a moment's notice. Dr. Ann Peterson taught me how to make copies of all important documents, certificates, deeds, contracts, tax returns, and I took advantage of moments when Richard was in the shower or asleep to photograph every page, every receipt, every paper that could be relevant to the divorce process, and sent everything to a secret email I created just for that, with a complex password he would never discover. The most ironic part of it all was that the very security cameras he installed to control me became my greatest allies, because the system automatically recorded everything to the cloud, and I had access to the application. So I started downloading and saving to a hidden USB drive all the videos that showed his abuse, the times he came home stumbling drunk in the middle of the night, the violent arguments where he yelled and threatened me, the moments when his mother-in-law and sister-in-law came to humiliate me while he stood by, laughing. But I needed more than just evidence of abuse. I needed concrete proof of his infidelities and embezzlement. So I started investigating on my own, always using the secret phone, always in the bathroom, or at times I was sure he wasn't around, and I discovered he had not one, but 3 simultaneous extramarital affairs, women he met on dating apps, took to expensive hotels, bought very expensive gifts, and he was spending money that should have been for our family, money he said we didn't have, for me to take a course I wanted, for me to buy decent clothes, for anything I asked for. I hired a private investigator, recommended by Dr. Ann Peterson, who followed Richard for 3 weeks and documented every encounter, every hotel, every restaurant, every compromising moment. And when I received the full report with photos, videos, times, locations, names of the women, amounts spent, I felt a mixture of pain for having been so blatantly deceived and satisfaction for holding irrefutable evidence he could never deny. I also discovered he was embezzling money from the company where he worked, making schemes with suppliers, receiving kickbacks, suspicious financial transactions he hid in accounts I didn't even know existed. And with the help of an accountant the attorney knew, we managed to track every illegal transaction, every suspicious deposit, every piece of evidence of crimes that went far beyond marital infidelity. During these months, I had to become an exceptional actress. I woke up every day and put on the mask of the obedient wife. I smiled when he arrived, prepared his dinner, pretended to believe every lie he told, and the hardest part was biting my tongue when he accused me of things I wasn't doing, while he himself was doing all that and worse. But I followed Dr. Ann Peterson's advice, remained calm, didn't give any hint that I knew everything, because surprise was essential for the plan to work perfectly. There were very difficult moments when I almost broke down, especially when he brought one of his mistresses home for dinner, introducing her as a coworker, and I had to sit at the table, serve food, converse politely, while inside I was screaming. But I took a deep breath, smiled, and even took a photo of the three of us together that he thought was just an innocent keepsake, unaware that photo would be used in court as yet more evidence of his audacity and disrespect. I also needed to protect my personal belongings, so I took all the jewelry my grandmother had left me as inheritance, important family documents, from his safe, and transferred them to a safe place at my parents' house, inventing some excuse about wanting my mother to wear the jewelry to a party, and he didn't even notice because he never really paid attention to me. He only watched me to ensure control, not because he genuinely cared. The most crucial step of the plan was to ensure my physical safety when the moment of confrontation arrived. So Dr. Ann Peterson prepared all the documents for an emergency protective order, everything ready to be filed at the exact moment. And we arranged with a specialized domestic violence police unit that as soon as I gave the signal, they would have a patrol car ready to come to my house if necessary. Because even with all the evidence, even with all the planning, controlling men are unpredictable and potentially dangerous when confronted. In parallel, I contacted my parents and finally told them part of the truth. Not everything yet, because I didn't want to worry them too much before I was safe, but enough for them to understand that I would need their support soon. And my father, who had never liked Richard much but respected my choice, told me their home was always open and that he would do anything to protect me, and that gave me an extra strength I didn't even know I needed. I also reconnected with two old friends I had distanced myself from due to Richard's pressure. I explained the situation briefly, and they offered to help me in any way necessary. One of them even offered her house as a temporary refuge should I need to leave home in an emergency. And having that support network, those people who believed in me and were willing to help, made me realize how much I had been manipulated into isolation, how much he had worked to leave me alone and vulnerable. But now I wasn't alone anymore. I had allies, I had proof, I had a plan, and I had the determination to finally free myself from that hell that had lasted for years. And when the day finally arrived, the day when all the documents were ready, all the evidence compiled, all the pieces in place, I knew there was no turning back, that the life I knew was going to end at that moment, but that finally, I would be able to breathe again. The day of confrontation arrived on a common Tuesday in March, and I specifically chose that day because I knew Richard had an appointment with one of his mistresses at lunchtime. The investigator had confirmed it, and I wanted him to come home relaxed, confident, unsuspecting of absolutely anything that was about to happen. When he opened the door at 7 in the evening with that fake smile and that mechanical kiss on my cheek, he found the house exactly as usual. Dinner ready, table set, me wearing an apron, everything perfectly normal in appearance. But this time, I wasn't alone. Seated in the living room were Dr. Ann Peterson, a court officer, and 2 police officers from the Specialized Domestic Violence Unit. The expression on his face when he saw that scene was something I'll never forget. It was as if someone had thrown a bucket of ice water on him. His eyes widened, the color drained from his face. His mouth opened, but no sound came out for several interminable seconds. And then came the attempt to control, that forced smile, that calculatingly calm voice asking what was happening, if there was a problem, if I was okay, as if he could still manipulate the situation, as if I were still that broken, controlled woman who believed his every word. Dr. Ann Peterson stood up, introduced herself formally, and began to explain in a firm, professional voice that she was there representing my interests in the contested divorce process that was being filed at that exact moment, and also to notify him about the emergency protective order that had been granted, prohibiting him from approaching me, from contacting me, and mandating that he should leave the residence immediately, taking only essential personal belongings. Richard tried to laugh, that nervous, scoffing laugh. He said it was ridiculous, that I was crazy, that there was no reason for divorce, much less a protective order, that he was an exemplary husband and everyone knew it. But when the attorney started listing, one by one, every piece of evidence we had, every video, every photo, every bank statement, every private investigator's report, every compromising message, every receipt for expenses on hotels and gifts for mistresses, every recording from his own cameras showing the verbal and psychological abuse, his face changed color from white to red, from red to purple, and the veins in his neck began to bulge as he processed that he had been caught, that all the tools he used to control me had turned against him, that I had completely turned the tables. It was then that he completely lost control. He started screaming, calling me horrible names, saying I would regret it, that he would destroy my life, that without him I was nothing, and he lunged at me with clenched fists. But the police officers immediately stepped between us, immobilizing him. And in that moment, seeing that man who had terrorized me for years being restrained by 2 people while he bawled like a spoiled child having a tantrum, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. I felt power. I felt control over my own life. And I remained completely calm. I didn't cry. I didn't yell back. I just looked him in the eyes and said in a firm, clear voice that the marriage was over, that I knew everything, absolutely everything, every lie, every betrayal, every abuse, every crime, and that he would pay for every second of suffering he had caused me. Dr. Ann Peterson then revealed the icing on the cake, informing him that in addition to the divorce proceedings and the protective order, she was forwarding to the district attorney's office all the evidence of embezzlement, fraud, and financial crimes he committed at the company, and that he would likely be criminally investigated, could lose his job, could be prosecuted, could even be imprisoned, depending on the severity of what was uncovered in the full investigation. And in that moment, I saw something in his eyes I had never seen before. I saw real fear. I saw desperation. I saw the sudden understanding that he had lost absolutely everything. His mother-in-law and sister-in-law, who had been alerted by neighbors about the commotion at the house, arrived in the middle of the confrontation, walking in through the still open door, and immediately started verbally attacking me, calling me ungrateful, a homewrecker, a liar, saying that their son and brother was a good man and I was a manipulative viper. But Dr. Ann Peterson, with surgical calm, offered to show them the evidence too, asked if they would like to see the photos of their son-in-law and brother entering hotels with other women, the videos of them themselves humiliating me in my own home, all of which were saved and could be used in additional lawsuits for emotional distress. And the silence that followed was deafening. Helen turned pale, and Patricia, for the first time in her life, had nothing to say, because in the face of concrete, irrefutable, documented proof, there was no denying, no manipulating, no distorting reality. The court officer then formally handed all the documents to Richard, explained that he had 2 hours to collect his essential belongings and leave the residence, that any violation of the protective order would result in immediate arrest, and that he should appear at hearings as summoned under penalty of default judgment. I observed all of it with a mixture of relief, sadness for the definitive death of what once a dream of a happy marriage, but mainly with an overwhelming sense of freedom, of finally being able to breathe, of finally having my life back. And when Richard walked out the door carrying a hastily packed suitcase, escorted by the police to ensure he wouldn't try anything against me, and looked back one last time with that expression of mixed hatred and defeat, I closed the door, leaned against it, and finally, after years, I cried. But they weren't tears of pain or fear. They were tears of relief, of a new beginning, of freedom reclaimed. The first few months after the separation were an intense emotional roller coaster. There were days when I woke up feeling invincible, free, mistress of my own life for the first time in years. And there were days when loneliness weighed heavily, when I questioned whether I had done the right thing, whether I couldn't have tried one more time to save the marriage. But in those moments, I reread the notes I made during the months of preparation, revisited the evidence of the abuse, and reminded myself that true love never controls, never watches, never diminishes, never humiliates. The divorce process proceeded surprisingly quickly, considering we had such solid evidence. Richard initially tried to contest it, hiring an expensive lawyer who tried to argue that I was exaggerating, that it was all a misunderstanding. But when we presented in court the videos from his own cameras, the investigators' reports, the bank statements, the conversations with his mistresses, even his lawyer suggested he accept the terms we were proposing, because fighting would be even more destructive for him. The judge, a man in his 60s with a severe but fair gaze, looked directly at Richard during the hearing and said something that deeply affected me. He said that he had used technological resources to commit systematic psychological violence, that this was serious, unacceptable, and that he should deeply reflect on his actions if he ever wished to be capable of having a healthy relationship with anyone. Financially, I secured a fair division of assets. The house remained mine because it was purchased with money my parents had given as a wedding gift, and Richard had to pay compensation for emotional distress that the judge determined based on the extent and duration of the documented abuse. Furthermore, the investigations into his financial crimes at the company progressed. He was fired for just cause, lost benefits, and faced labor and criminal lawsuits that left him in a very complicated financial situation. The mistresses, when they found out about each other and about his crimes, all abandoned him immediately, and even his family started to distance themselves when they realized the extent of what he had done. Helen came to see me months later, apologized with tears in her eyes, saying she had been blind, that she had created a monster and hadn't realized it. And although I accepted her apology because holding on to resentment would only hurt me, I made it clear that I didn't want to maintain contact, that chapter of my life was definitively closed. I went back to studying, enrolled in that course I always wanted to take but he never allowed, started therapy to process the trauma of years of psychological abuse, reconnected with old friends, made new friends, resumed hobbies, rediscovered who I was beyond being someone's controlled wife. And every small achievement, every decision I made on my own without needing anyone's approval or permission, made me feel stronger, more whole, more myself. A year and a half after the separation, I was in a completely different place, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. I had learned to trust my intuition again, to set healthy boundaries, to recognize signs of toxic relationships from the start, and most importantly, I had learned that my worth didn't depend on having someone by my side, that I was complete and sufficient on my own. I met incredible people in the process of rebuilding my life, women who had gone through similar situations, and who became a genuine network of support and friendship. Men, too, who showed me that not everyone is controlling or abusive, that there are good people in the world who respect boundaries and value the independence of others. And although I wasn't looking for a new relationship, I was open to the possibility if and when the right person appeared, but without haste, without desperation, without need, just with the certainty that I would never again accept less than respect, trust, and true love. The house that was once a prison full of cameras became my sanctuary. I removed all surveillance devices, repainted the walls with cheerful and vibrant colors, decorated with plants and artwork that reflected my personality, and each room told a story of new beginnings, of healing, of freedom reclaimed. And when I woke up in the morning and had coffee alone on the balcony, listening to the birds, feeling the sun on my face, without fear of being judged, without fear of being monitored, without fear of being diminished, I felt profound gratitude for having had the courage to say enough, to plan my escape, to execute every step, even with fear, because that temporary fear had been worth every second of the permanent freedom I now enjoyed. As for Richard, I learned from mutual acquaintances that he tried to rebuild his life, moved to another city after all the scandals, tried to start fresh somewhere where no one knew his story. And part of me, the part that still believed in human redemption, hoped that he had truly learned something, that he had sought professional help, that he had worked on himself to never repeat those destructive patterns with another person. But that was no longer my responsibility, no longer my concern. He had his own lessons to learn and his own path to tread. My journey now was about building the life I always deserved, about honoring the courageous woman who woke up that day and decided she deserved more, about using my story to inspire other women who are still trapped in similar situations, to show that there is always a way out, there is always hope, There is always the possibility of a new beginning, no matter how difficult it seems at the moment. Looking back at all those years of suffering, of control, of feeling small and worthless, I wouldn't say it was lost time, because every moment of pain taught me something valuable about my strength, my resilience, my ability to reinvent myself. And if I could go back in time and speak to that woman who was locked in the bathroom, holding a hidden phone, trembling with fear, but determined to change her destiny, I would tell her to have faith, to have courage, to have patience. Because on the other side of that fear awaited a life more beautiful than she ever imagined possible. A life of freedom, of peace, of self-love. A life that was finally truly hers. And now I want to hear from you, who have followed this story to the end. Have you ever been through a situation similar to mine, where you felt controlled, watched, diminished by someone who claimed to love you? Or perhaps you know someone who is living this right now. A friend, a sister, a cousin, a coworker who always seems tense, isolated, afraid, and you don't know how to help? Leave your comment below, sharing your story, your experience, your reflections on this delicate but important topic. Because when we share our experiences, when we break the silence, when we show that we are not alone in these challenges, we create a support network that can literally save lives. If you had been in my situation, what would you have done differently? Do you think you would have had the courage to plan your exit? Or would you have kept waiting for things to get better on their own? These reflections are important because they help us understand our own limits, our own patterns, and prepare us to recognize abusive situations before it's too late. I want to take this moment to say something very important from the bottom of my heart. If you are going through a situation of abuse, control, or violence, whether physical, psychological, emotional, or financial, know that help is available. There are qualified professionals, there are laws that protect you, there are organizations ready to support you. But more important than all of that, there is a God who loves you unconditionally, who knows every tear you've shed, every night you've spent awake in fear, every moment of despair, and who has a plan of restoration and healing for your life. I wouldn't have been able to get through all of this without my faith in Jesus Christ, without the prayers I made in secret, without the certainty that God was with me even in the darkest moments. And it was through my spiritual connection that I found the strength to take the first step, to believe that I deserved more, to trust that there would be a better future after that storm. If you identified with my story, I encourage you not only to seek professional, legal, and psychological help, but also to seek spiritual aid in God, to develop or strengthen your faith in Jesus Christ, because true and lasting transformation comes from within, comes from the renewal of the Spirit, comes from the certainty that you are a son or daughter of God, and that this gives you immeasurable worth that no one can take from you.